The final Twisted Metal contest is over. But there is a bunch more bonus crap to do in Head-On, outside of the story mode. So we're entering the challenge mode for the first time, where we can now play as Tower Tooth. Completing the story mode of 5 separate characters unlocks the ability to drive the final boss in one small level, as a little bonus challenge. His bio is exactly the same as Darktooth's because it's the same drivers, rather the same one driver who split into 2 bodies. And nothing in the game tells you that this feature actually exists. You just have to stumble upon it after completing the arbitrary task of beating the game 5 times. Which doesn't make much sense to me, but I guess we're dealing with the fevered insanity of Sweet Tooth, or whatever they keep saying. Nothing has to make sense. And we're going to the Rome Coliseum, a deathmatch version, and that's the only level where you can play as Tower Tooth. Can't even play as him on the Tokyo streets where you actually fought him. You just don't have a choice, you have to come here. And you have to face 7 enemies in what they call the fight of your life. It is more enemies than you could face anywhere else in the game, so that's kind of interesting. We start out playing as the fire-breathing head down at the bottom of the tower, and then when we lose half our health, we switch to the large head at the top. But health refills will allow us to switch back to the fire-breathing head. Just so we get a good clean look at it, the special here is to breathe fire, and the head homes in on the nearest enemy. Of course, when you switch to your second form, your special changes, you may well be able to figure out what it's going to be. And our machine gun, like Darktooth, is Sweet Tooth special. We can fire endlessly. And it's your best source of DPS, really. Not that you need it too bad, this fight of our life is actually very easy. I've only managed to die here 1 time. We have gotten very close to death in this fight, but Tower Tooth has so much health that when you're playing the low health beeping sound effect, it's basically a full health bar for any other vehicle. And here's the second form special. Bunch of lightning strikes that hit all nearby enemies. So with these tools at our disposal, we should have absolutely no problem finishing this off. There's just one last little thing to be shown off, and that is when you use the shield as Tower Tooth, it turns purple instead of green. Same with Darktooth, just like in the boss fight. So this whole playing as the final boss idea was something they wanted to do in Twisted Metal Black. They designed it and programmed it and everything. The problem was, that final boss is a helicopter. So completely different from driving a car, yet they couldn't really work out how to make it play properly in the Twisted Metal engine. So you were basically just a car that was elevated above all the other vehicles. Broke all their AI scripting, didn't really make any sense from a gameplay perspective, so they cut it out. But it would have worked exactly like this. You would have been able to play exactly one tiny level, kill a bunch of regular enemies just for fun. And it did make it far enough into development that the helicopter is on the character select screen in the finished game. He's above all the other vehicles. It's called Black Razor. You can zoom in to see his driver, but he doesn't have a bio. And people have hacked legitimate copies of the game to make the character selectable, though still not playable. That aspect is completely removed from the disc. But there are videos of it up on YouTube. I'll link one in the video description. It's pretty neat to find a new character in such an old game. And now, Tower Tooth's rampage is drawing to its predictable conclusion. Flamethrower will not reach Spectre, but he can't run from us for long. We're taking up half the damn Coliseum. So now he's screwed. Challenge over. But before we wrap things up with Tower Tooth, we're gonna go look at the PSP version. Can't go one video without switching this thing. In this version, the lightning special also fires 10 napalm cones, which can instant kill weaker enemies like Mr. Grimm. And you only face 5 total opponents in this challenge. They made it considerably harder for the PS2 port, and it's still really easy. but it's a fun little bonus thing. They probably could have done a little more with it, but there is already plenty crammed into Twisted Metal Head-On. And then far more crammed into the Extra Twisted Edition. There was Twisted Metal Lost, that was in the Twisted Metal Black Let's Play, the Final 4 videos if you want to go watch that. There's the original FMV endings, you saw those in the Twisted Metal 1 LP. There's a half-hour documentary, I'll link that in the video description as well. And then there's the Sweet Tour. Finally time to take a look at that. In this mode, we get to play as, not Sweet Tooth, but Needles Kane, on foot and outside of his vehicle for the first time. I know I use Sweet Tooth and Needles Kane interchangeably, as do the games, but Sweet Tooth is the vehicle, Needles is the driver, and Frankenstein is the doctor. And we found our hero once again condemned to an asylum. But this one is architecturally preposterous, I'll say. And there's that low poly mug. Seem to have 2 eyes there, that's not canon. So we have to ascend these ladders to escape our underground asylum or prison or whatever this crumbling facility is supposed to be. There's our fancy attack combo. Might be the reason that Sweet Tooth does all his killing with a vehicle. Never forget that David Jaffe also directed God of War. So escaping that section gets us to our first Sweet Tooth head. Activating that opens a little info blurb telling us what is going on here, and also gives us a bunch of pictures of the developers. So each of these Sweet Tooth heads is called a factoid, and each one contains a concept art gallery with a bit of director's commentary about what the concept art is for. Very interesting. It's a wealth of information, in fact. There are over 100 pieces of concept art that are contained in these 29 factoids. That's what the 29 out of 29 in the corner is. I've already collected all of them, recorded them, assembled them into nice galleries for you, and also linked them in the video description. Didn't want to thumb through all of them on camera while I'm going through and exploring this facility, because that takes forever. It's hard enough to navigate this place without getting distracted by the factoids, because it is a real labyrinth. Once you come to any fork, you have to take that turn, follow it all the way to its end, and then come back. Otherwise you'll be missing stuff. And even if you do that, that eventually stops working towards the end of this area. And then there's a whole nother area, but we'll get to that. As for the concept art, the pieces are very interesting, and their commentary is very insightful, but many of them are just pictures someone took with a camera of a piece of paper that had drawings on it. Oh, real quick, there's a War of the Monsters arcade cabinet here. That's pretty neat. But a lot of those pictures of pieces of paper are completely washed out. The white balance is terrible, so you can't see what was drawn. So I had to manually adjust the brightness for many of these pieces so that you could finally see what they are actually showing. Some of them are still pretty incoherent, but for the most part you can see them much more clearly than the actual game displays them. Now we are about to come upon something important. Not the pit, but the control room. This is a branching path where, if you take the turn like you've been trained to do, you go awry and you waste a bunch of time or completely miss this area, where we find actual living humans. And a control panel overlooking the entrance pit that we came from. That's the pit that they were referencing, I guess. The factoid here is also different from the rest. It's an explanation of who these two people are. They are Shuhei Yoshida and Alan Becker, some Sony executives. And instead of concept art, we get a picture of Shuhei, what he actually looks like. Then we get to use Needles' amazing Mortal Kombat skills to finish them. That'll teach you to cancel Twisted Metal Harbor City. Actually, from the best information and speculation that I've been able to gather, Harbor City was canceled because the developers themselves did not like the direction it was going in, and instead decided to make Twisted Metal head-on. Instead of doing another game in the Dark World, they wanted to do another game in the Colorful World. Have it be a little more fun and easygoing. The information we have about it from Lost suggests that Harbor City was already taking on a lighter tone over the course of development, and fans might have revolted if their Twisted Metal Black sequel had been less grimdark and edgy. So, might have been for the best that they just did head-on instead. Black doesn't really lend itself to a sequel as such, I don't think. I definitely think they could have worked it into the greater series narrative better than they did, but alas, that's just a regret we'll have to live with. Now here we have the sign for the exit, and indeed it will take us to the exit, but we also have the path ahead, which just loops back to a preceding area, where we have the sign to the boiler room, which we already went down. So if you take this forward path the first time you see it, you will just miss a factoid head and get to the exit a little sooner. Another awkward way that they kind of screw you over. Also, the factoid about the two Sony executives, that one was numbered 14, and there are 14 total here in the asylum. Presenting them out of order like that makes it really easy to screw yourself up and not get 100% of the factoids. But we did get all of the factoids in the asylum. Rather, we looked at all of them. I got them all off screen. So now we can move on to the second area, the impound lot. Don't know why this is right outside of an asylum. And if you did miss one of the old factoids, you can go back into the asylum. Waste all your time trying to go find it again. Because collecting all of the factoids is the win condition of Sweet Tour. But what the hell even is Sweet Tour? Well, Twisted Metal Harbor City was intended to have third-person combat out-of-vehicle sections scattered throughout the game. And Sweet Tour is the demo that they cobbled together to show off what that would have been like. Or I guess probably what they had during development of Harbor City, which was scrapped and then reassembled into something vaguely playable. If these had made it into a game, they would have had you running around as Needles, obviously, but also there would have been sections where you played as Preacher, Sweet Tooth's nemesis, and I have no idea what goals they would have had you try to complete, but could have been interesting. Now we come to a platforming section with these controls. Like, this is my jump, and it has a delay. This is gonna suck. Alright, that was a close one. I gotcha. We can't get grind up in this thresher. We can just walk right over it. And in fact, if we had read the factoid before this area, would have given it away. It says, the on-foot levels of Twisted Metal Black 2 were slated to contain various platforming gameplay challenges, like the one you see before you. Collision on the traps, as well as the careful timing needed for any platforming play challenge, was never completed. This is why you can walk through any of the traps and platform challenges in this level and not get hurt. Enjoy! We won't go so easy on you next time. There is no next time, guys. Sad to say. It is a little faster if you do the platforming properly. You don't have to climb up onto each of the things and you get to skip the animation. But that gives us a hint of what the gameplay of the on-foot sections would have been like. They could have been good. Like I said, David Jaffe directed God of War. He has some expertise in designing action games. But they could have, and probably more likely would have been, tedious nightmares that you would have wanted to get over with as soon as possible so that you could move back onto the car combat. Because you really just don't want this. Even if it were well designed, it's not what you're playing Twisted Metal for. This on-foot gameplay was always doomed to be an awkward gimmick. But it makes for a fun little bonus. and an excuse to fill an area with concept art galleries. This part's kind of annoying because they don't tell you that you can climb on things and sidle across them like this. And also, you don't need to sidle across it. You can just climb on top of it and walk over the fence that you're trying to get over. So you could waste a lot of time there. And you probably wouldn't really want to do that because there's so much time that you have to waste here in the impound lot. It's much more linear than the Asylum was, but it is also much more sparse. Just huge swaths of land with nothing going on. Repetitive textures and environmental designs over and over again. They've got these traps, but of course, we don't have to worry about the traps. They don't even give us a cartoon flattening that would have turned us into an accordion. Wasted opportunity. Can't help but imagine that this would have been the stealth level. Maybe it's just because of Manhunt having a very similar level to this one. But if that's the case, that's a terrible idea. Throwing stealth gameplay into your action car combat game. This next trap, it's much easier to just walk over it than do the platforming. And the ground looks kind of unfinished. Also, I don't know how that sand was supposed to kill you. Maybe they were going to put spikes in there later. So I will give the Twisted Metal developers props for always changing as much as they possibly can when they make a new game. They seem to understand that the car combat format was a particularly shallow one, and it could stagnate very, very quickly if they didn't change things up as much as they could. So since Twisted Metal 2, they just throw in every idea they can, really, just to keep things fresh. This would have been a particularly extreme example of them trying new things, and it didn't work out for them ultimately. I once got stuck on that skylight for like a full minute because I forgot that you could punch. I'd been running in circles and looking at factoids for like half an hour at that point, since the last time I'd thrown a punch. Easy to forget. This section, this is the 24th factoid, and the one above behind the boxes is the 25th. I hate when they're out of order like that. And all the concept art that we can find only covers Twisted Metals 1, 2, and Black. So that's why I decided to do these 3 games as their own LP after I've already done Black, so that we can see the full, what they consider the canon of Twisted Metal. This here is the final section of the impound lot, but we've been wandering around exploring so long that the ambient music just ends and leaves us in disturbing silence. Yeah, I don't care for it. Also, this section is non-linear, so the order of the heads is completely random. I've gone through and touched them in the order that they are numbered. You have to draw like a triangle around the area to get them all in the right order. And those numbers are completely arbitrary anyway. And here we have Sweet Tooth. We're reunited with our old vehicle, and this is the 29th and final factoid. You can check all of them out in the bonus galleries that I've put in the video description, to reiterate. Now let's escape that searchlight, because we are done here. If you don't have all 29 of the factoids, it will not allow you to leave, but you can just hit start and select quit from the start screen. Does exactly the same thing as completing it, so it's kind of pointless. And we're pretty much done here, except for one last thing. We gotta watch the credits, because the Extra Twisted Edition has a new credit sequence. There's Calypso's guards from the FMV version of the original endings. That's a nice touch. Then there's a bunch of art from Twisted Metal Lost. A lot of the stuff they use here is not in the concept art galleries from the Suite Tour. So this is even more bonus concept art. They really went all out for Extra Twisted Edition. It is a phenomenal version of a very good Twisted Metal game. They actually changed a lot of the game itself for this PS2 port. They made it play a lot faster. Damage values are much higher, health values in general are much lower. In terms of design, this is a much better version of the game. But on a technical level, it is much worse. I haven't mentioned it before, but there's a glitch that when you lose a life, it works the same way it did in Twisted Metal 1 and 2, which is if you carry on to the next level, you still have that life lost. It doesn't reset to 2 lives at the end of each level like it should. And if you lose all your lives and select retry a level, you will start with 0 extra lives. So you just have that 1 life to complete the whole level. It could have been a design choice, but it works properly on the PSP version, and if you save the game, when you reload, you'll have full lives, so probably not a choice. Also, every cutscene in this game, including the FMV Twisted Metal 1 endings, they all will sporadically skip. So I had to take the audio from the PSP version and lay it over the audio from the PS2 version so that you wouldn't be distracted by all the skipping. Not that the cutscenes are all that great on average, but I wanted to present the best possible version. Now, if you stuck with me through this whole game and through 2 entire credit sequences, I want to reward you with something awesome. Last time we were in Big Blue Stadium, we hadn't learned that sometimes they will leave remote bomb pickups near destructible objects. And there's a remote bomb pickup right next to this stage, where the band Level is performing their song Disaster Proof. Last time I was here, I said this band couldn't be killed. But what if I just wasn't trying hard enough? Now that's how you end an LP. Huge thanks to YouTube commenter Evie Lunis for pointing out that that was possible. And shoutouts to Level for letting themselves die in what is likely their most memorable public performance. Now, I considered leaving hidden coded messages throughout this video as a hint as to what my next Twisted Metal LP might be, because that's how they announced the 2012 remake and everything, blah blah blah. No one bothered to decode them last time I tried that, so I just made the next video, and you can watch it right now. Thanks for watching Head On, and I hope you'll join me for the Twisted Metal remake.